College, university, dorms, parties, alcohol, freedom. The greatest time of your life. Away from parents, away from home. Guys, girls, sleeping, studying. In the midst of all of these things, what if there is also the paranormal? Perverted ghosts hanging around dorm rooms, or floating men seen through campus. What if you weren't alone at night? Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and let's get ready for college. It's time to get wild with the supernatural. College unease. This story is fairly brief, as the incident was rather brief in itself. I'm currently a mature student at a college in Bedfordshire, studying fine art in a specialist art block. To make sure I get the best use of the studio, I often stay after normal hours to do extra work. Now, the art block consists of 2 floors, not including the ground floor, and the studio I work in is on the top floor. Usually, there is staff or a few students wandering about, but on this occasion it happened to be an open day, and everyone was in the sports hall in the adjoining building. Seeing as I am classed as a mature student, the last member of staff handed me the keys to the studio, asking me to lock up the floor when I was finished. Everything was normal for the first hour or so. I sat in the small studio with the partition wall to the large studio ajar. Concentrating on my work, I put on the radio and began to sing along. Halfway through singing, I heard the door to the large studio open, then footsteps walking up the side of the partition. Thinking it must be a member of the staff or someone that was lost, I paused my music and said, "Hello?" The footsteps sounded as if they had come up to just behind the opening to the partition and stopped. So thinking I may have startled someone, I popped my head round to look into the larger studio, but no one was there. Shrugging it off, I put my music back on and continued with my work, but the same thing kept happening. The door would open, the footsteps would walk in my direction, then I would pop my head round and no one would be there. It was early December, so at about 6 p.m., outside was almost pitch black, and these noises were beginning to make me feel uneasy. So I decided to lock up the studio and go do some work on the large printer photocopier at the end of the hallway. I was a little unnerved still from my experience in the studio, and the floor I was on felt eerily quiet without my radio playing. So I made up my mind to photocopy just a couple more bits, then go home and finish my work on Monday. But as I was photocopying my last page, I heard the door at the other end of the corridor fly open and someone running up the corridor towards the double doors behind me. Nearly jumping out of my skin, I spun around to see who it was, but just like in the studio, no one was there. My grandmother always used to tell me that if a spirit is trying to scare you, you need to stand your ground. Then they should stop. So fighting my urge to run, I looked down the corridor and said out loud, "Can you please leave me alone? You're not scaring me." Then feeling a tad shaky, I turned back to the printer. Unfortunately, my speaking out did not work. I suddenly heard running on the stairs, banging, and the double doors behind me began to open and close a little too violently for my liking. So needless to say, I grabbed my things and ran. I've not been to that floor alone since, although my curiosity and urge to help others makes me want to return there alone to see if whatever it is needs help. I would like to know what your views on this matter is, and if anyone has any advice as to whether it would be safe for me to go back there after dark and alone. Thank you for reading. Small college town. I go to college in a small Louisiana town. It's a black college that used to be nothing but sharecropper fields. My freshman year, me and my boyfriend walked up to the gas station to get some snacks for a movie night. Being that it was spring break, we had no car and little money. We just hung out around campus to enjoy the quiet. It was the first day of break, and we had a movie marathon, and we ran out of snacks around 11 o'clock. So my boyfriend grabbed his backpack and wallet, and I put my shoes on and we were off. Now, the town my school is in has a very creepy vibe at night. There's a lot of swampland and wilderness at night, on top of haunted dorms, but that's a post for another time. So as we're walking to the gas station, we both have a weird feeling as we're walking over the bridge that separates city from campus. On the way back from the gas station, me and my boyfriend notice a man in the opposite side of the street crossing the bridge. He had on what looked like cut-off blue jeans. From what I saw, it looked like jeans, and a red thermo-type top, and a straw hat with no shoes. He was just walking. I couldn't make out a face, but he had a form. But you could see right through him. My boyfriend and I kept walking, and as we got to the point where we would pass him, he had disappeared. Since that night, we have had a few more experiences with people who we couldn't tell were real or were spirits. The subject still makes my boyfriend uncomfortable. What do you guys think it was? I would love the feedback. College days. It's been a long time since I got back here. Sorry I haven't been spending so much time to write my experiences anymore. Anyways, let me share as many stories as I can while I still have the time. As you all know, I live in Baguio City, Philippines, and this is considered one of the scariest cities in my country. There are places that are pretty famous when it comes to creepiness, but there are also several that you might not know about. And that's basically why I'm writing this now, so you can have an idea of a few universities that I've had some encounters with. This is an experience I've had in 2007. I was in my first year of university at the University of Cadirlis. You can search this on Google. I was taking up BS nursing. We have our own building separated from other colleges, and all 8 floors are occupied. My schedule back then starts at 7:30 a.m. for anatomy and physiology, a subject I never really liked. Our classroom is located at the top floor, and I hated it so much because the elevator isn't operational up until 8:30 in the morning. One time, I was running really late. I had to take a cab going to school, and the challenge there was having to climb up the stairs. So when I arrived, I rushed to take the stairs to find that there are a lot of people trying to catch up to their own classes that morning, adding that to a busy day where students loitering around the corridors. Since I was almost late, I quickly ran into the fire exit to have a better chance of getting there on time. And yes, the fire exit was empty, so I ran as fast as I could to reach the 8th floor. Everything was normal until I was on the 5th floor of the building. It was the fire exit, so you can imagine how narrow the stairs were. It wasn't as creepy as you're imagining right now. It's bright and clean. I was approaching the said floor when I noticed a child, around 7 or 8 years old, sitting in the middle of the stairs. His face was on his knees, so I couldn't really see if he was sleeping or just resting his head. The kid looked okay. He was in his school uniform, only it was one of those really old school uniforms that you can only see in your mom or dad's pictures. It was totally fine, as I was thinking that he was waiting for his parents, who could have been one of the instructors for the university. So I excused myself, but as soon as I passed beside him, he started whining and crying. I did not pay attention to it and continued climbing up the stairs. I was almost on the 7th floor when I noticed the kid's crying started to get louder and louder. So I took a quick peek from where I am to see what's happening. And yet he was just there with the same position as earlier, so I started walking again. I felt my chest beat faster as I reached the 7th floor, to find the same kid in the middle of the stairs. Only that he's now standing up, looking straight into my eyes with a pale face. And guess what? His feet weren't touching the ground. I immediately went out from the fire exit and ran straight up to my classroom. Shortly after, I was rushed into the clinic due to hyperventilation, and I couldn't even explain it to the nurse, thinking she might say I was insane or under the influence of drugs. Later on, I'm starting to hear so many encounters from other people on the same floor of the fire exit. But until now, no one can tell us the history of the boy. I really hoped you enjoyed reading this story, and I look forward to writing many more of my stories here. More power, and God bless. College girls haunted by a pervy poltergeist. I'm brand new to Reddit, though I'm a lurker on creepy subreddits. This is my first post, so if I posted in the wrong place, let me know. When I was a sophomore in college, I transferred from my local community college to a 4-year university where I would finally get the move out from home and have roommates. I can't even tell you how ecstatic I was to finally move out. A year and a half after everyone from high school did, I was excited for my own space, roommates, new stuff, freedom, all of it. The school I decided on was a small liberal arts college on the coast of Massachusetts. We had 3 private beaches, old converted mansions, and tons of beautiful, awesome history. It also happened to be the school my mom went to, so between all of those things, it was easily my first choice school. When I got to school, it was the beginning of spring semester. Transferred had a mini weekend-long orientation before the rest of the school came back from winter break. So I was literally the only person in my whole dorm, besides the RA. The dorm I chose was an old converted house barn that was somewhat secluded from the rest of the campus. I chose it because my mom had lived there too. But in hindsight, that should have been my first warning. All the buildings that were old enough to have been there where my mom attended school were pretty crappy compared to the new hotel-like dorms popping up all over our quickly growing campus. But I was stuck there. When I got to my room, it was noticeably cold. Freezing, actually. I was surprised because the rest of the dorm was obviously heated on this cold January day, but mine seemed to be shut off. I chalked it up to the long break without heat and figured that when the rest of the school came back, it would heat up. The next day I met my roommate, Emily and Katie. I told them how I thought our heat was broken, and they casually told me that no, that it was just the dorm ghost. I laughed because I thought they had just come up with some creative name for the old faulty heating system, but I quickly learned that that wasn't the case. Over the course of the few months I lived there, I had almost daily run-ins with the dorm ghost. Our room was always either freezing cold or sweltering hot, no matter what the rest of the dorm felt like. I suppose you could chalk it up to an old heating system, which I did at first, but when you call the maintenance guy 3 times on a 5-degree day to demand he fix your heat, he tells you that it's in perfectly working order, you'll start to believe anything. The reason I call this spirit PERVY is because it totally loved to see us undress. The focal point of our room was 2 large picture windows overlooking the pond on campus. Sometimes the shades popped up on their own, but only when it was dark out, our lights were on, and people were walking by. Once, Emily's friend called her to tell her that she could see my boobs. It was pretty embarrassing. I call it a he, would also jiggle the door handles when we were dressing, making us believe one of us was locked out or something when that was never actually the case. Katie constantly had to straighten her hair in the bathroom due to our broken smoke alarm, but we realized eventually that it wasn't the hair straightener that set off the alarm, it was our pervy paranormal friend. The smoke alarm went off at least once a week after moving our routine to the bathroom, but only in our room and almost exclusively in the dead of night. Perhaps the most solid proof was Emily, Katie, and I ever saw had to do with my printer. My printer was loud and totally annoying. If I had to use it, I'd turn it on if everyone was awake because it was definitely loud enough to wake even the most sound sleepers. But the dorm ghost wasn't as polite. My printer constantly turned on by itself, and it would print blank pages. Sometimes when we wake up, 10 sheets of paper would be sitting on the floor below the printer tray. Through all of this, we were never really scared. The spirit did not feel at all malicious. If I had to guess, it was a teenage boy who liked messing with us. Sometimes, when I was alone, I would talk to him, but he never made any visual or auditory contact. Looking back at it, I kinda miss him. As weird as it sounds, living there, you never felt like you were alone. I miss him most especially now that my new apartment is way creepier and has something else, a little angrier in it. But that's a story for a different day. Thank you. The Haunted Dorm. I go to a large university, and last year, I'm convinced that I stayed in a haunted dormitory. Before the experiences that I will describe, I wasn't sure about whether or not I believed in ghosts, but now I'm a firm believer. From the beginning, my roommate and I noticed that odd things would happen with the dorm to our dorm room. It would come open even when we had closed it. We chalk it up to the fact that the dorm was very old and that the doorknob must be sticking. Then one day in October, I noticed a flyer in the library that was offering ghost tours in honor of Halloween. This piqued my interest. I didn't know that my school had any ghost stories associated with it, so when I went home I googled ghost stories about my school and was surprised by what I found. I found out that 3 dorms on my campus were considered to be haunted, and one of those dorms, surprise, surprise, was my dorm. Apparently, a senior girl had hung herself in one of the rooms on the eve of graduation one year. Very sad and creepy. The dorm was supposedly haunted by her spirit, and her article claimed that that students would complain of random noises and their doors opening and closing. I found this very amusing and decided to tell my roommate. I started telling her the story, and when I got to the part about the hanging, our door, which was definitely closed, flew open violently. I'm not exaggerating here. It banged into the closet door, which was located on the wall behind the door, so hard that there was an actual mark on the closet door handle. There was no one in the hall. My roommate screamed, "Stop talking, stop talking, stop!" because she was so freaked out. We never discussed it again. Also, a few months later, an incident occurred in the hallway. It was about 2 a.m. on a weeknight when suddenly I was awakened by someone running up and down the hallway, banging on the wall. I figured it was just someone who was drunk, although that was very strange for a weeknight. I just went back to sleep. About 30 minutes later, it happened again. At this point, I was annoyed and opened my door to tell the offensive person to shut up. But to my surprise, there wasn't anyone running up and down the hallway. There were multiple other sleepy college girls standing in their pajamas, asking who in the fuck had caused all the noise. Almost everyone was up out of bed, wondering what the hell was going on, but no one was making the noise. All very strange. Other small incidences happen frequently, but these are the most memorable.